There we go. Okay, so we're now recording. So sorry, we forgot about that for a second. And Kyle and I got chatting a little bit, but basically, so sorry, Kyle, I'll do a quick overview.
Yeah.
In the WCLN development resources area, down under development and practice videos. And this is where we're at. We're kind of talking about doing practice videos and or you could look at them as videos that are used for review for students who have just finished a quiz or a test or stuff like that. In other words, they're going into the question database. And so the practice videos, we have a few things in there that we talked about last time. And then I realized that there were a few questions that people were asking that I didn't clarify. So getting the videos into the question database, and Kyle and Riley are familiar with most of that stuff because they've been working on lessons in the past and projects and such. But what I added there was just uploading it to YouTube, and then when you embed it into the questions, just kind of generally where it goes is pretty sparse on the details. So if you know, by all means, if you read that and you're kind of like, what the heck's he talking about? Certainly get back to me and I can fill in some details. One of the things that a lot of people may not realize is our standard for video size going into anything is 640 by 360, and then we add this REL equals 0 at the end. And again, what that does is it just says that when the YouTube video ends and they are giving suggestions of what they consider related videos, that when we put REL equals 0, it says don't do that out there generally. Do that using only videos from the publisher, from the same publisher, which is WCLN. So it'll only go to the WCLN channel to show suggestions. And Kyle, I probably told you this before, but just for those checking this out, the reason for that is kind of so I get less awkward phone calls from principals and various where they have a parent with them in their office and they're contacting me and saying why the parent is terribly upset because WCLN has pornography in their videos, in their courses, because when the video is finished, there are all these questionable suggestions for videos come up, and I have to explain that and make everybody all embarrassed by saying that has nothing to do with our courses. That is going to your browser history, and it's coming up with suggestions that might be similar to ours, but mostly to do with what you've watched in the past. Has not a darn thing to do with our courses. And so to avoid those kind of conversations, putting REL equals 0 means that it doesn't go to the browser history, it just goes to our channel. And so, yeah, just avoids me having to deal with that. So basically, so that was just one little addition there, just a heads up on that. Now, as far as another thing, a heads up on, is I have been going through the database a little bit more. Now, in that last meeting, we had a bit of a conversation about the troubles with short answer questions. And a few conversations followed up since that. And I guess the general consensus from a lot of people was that, you know what, let's just, if we can get enough people involved here and get some good people in digging in there, let's just go hard at the short answer questions, and let's just get rid of all the ones that aren't really good, which may be all of them, or maybe probably 90% plus of them. So basically that slows us down a little bit. In other words, just going in and making video for existing questions, we have to have one initial step prior to that, and that is going through and cleaning up the short answer questions so that we don't have to, you know, kind of fish through those as we're going. Kind of maybe better to clean them up ahead of time. So based on that, at some point we're going to have a little meeting like this, and I'll show people, you know, some techniques for you know, watching for how many questions do we have in this category. can we just delete the short answer and carry on with it? What are the short answer? What does a good short answer, if there is such a thing, look like? Stuff like that, so that we can all make decisions as we go through and kind of clean that up, and then go back and add the videos. So basically, what I did then is I've adjusted things a little bit as far as where you guys should be starting. So I'm assuming that that yourself, Kyle, and Riley will probably get started on these questions anytime. So what I did was
before starting videos.
Starting starting on the videos right away. So
Okay.
so basically what I did was, so Kyle, I had measurement down for you, and that was possibly the one to start with, but I spent a little time this morning looking at the measurement, and I recognized that there are a lot of short answer ones. There are some essay ones. There's some questionable questions in there. And so, so basically, I'd rather not throw you in there and waste your time at all with you kind of, trying to figure out what you should be doing with particular questions.
Right.
Probably better that we save the measurement one for after we've had that conversation about how to clean up a database first. So what I did was
PC first. Eh?
Yeah. So what I did was factoring down here. And so the factoring I took a look at as well, and the factoring is pretty darn clean. I don't think there are any short answer questions in that. And that's something that's generally true. We only find the short answer questions in kind of the grade 10 and below, mostly grade 9 and below. So it seems like when the younger database questions were being built, we had some developers in here who were comfortable with short answer. And at the time, I didn't recognize the problems, so I didn't make it clear that we should be avoiding those. So I'll take the blame for that. And here we are. We have some cleanup to do. So the factoring one, if you wouldn't mind starting with that there, Kyle. And that way you don't have to worry about watching for the wrong questions or stuff. You just have to recognize that going in there and realizing that pretty much every question is going to have a video. The only questions that you wouldn't do videos are if you're kind of like, man, I really have nothing to say about this. Even if it is just a 30-second video for a quick explanation, I think, and let's do it this way. I think that you should do a video for every question. And if you come across one that you think there's a good argument for not, I'm totally interested in having that conversation, because we have in our discussions here with people, who are developing the courses and stuff, we have been kind of talking about that. And some of us really is every question going to need it? Well, if it doesn't need it, is it really a good question that there's no explanation associated? Well, that's a good, so we're kind of a little bit uncertain as to whether we feel comfortable saying that all questions should have video. Are there questions out there that don't need it? Maybe what we'll do is we'll kind of come up with that based on your feedback and kind of see what we come up with. For now, hit everyone with a video, and if you have one that you're kind of like, this might be a good example of what we were talking about, where a video isn't that advantageous, then let's Skype, let's chat about it, and then maybe we can provide feedback to other people as they get involved in the videos and stuff like that, or maybe we decide there's certain questions that just get deleted. I don't know, but worth the conversation. Okay. So
are you able to show me are you able to show me where I find these questions?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll jump into that next. Right? Yeah. Okay. And so Riley, because I assume that you'll also be kind of looking at things, one of the questions or categories that I did as a bit of an experiment when we were starting the conversation about short answer is I went into fractions and I wiped out all the short answer. And that was kind of, I brought that up in that last meeting. And it cost me bunch of hours kind of rectifying that, because then I recognized that, wow, there were a lot more short answer than I thought. And now I left some of these categories a little bit bare, so I had to go fill them in. So I had to, convert a lot of questions into multiple choice ones and stuff like that. So anyways, in the end, I left this fractions unit as clean. And so if you wouldn't mind starting with the fractions unit, and again, hitting every question. And if you have one that you kind of think a video is totally useless, please let me know, and that would be a good conversation to have. Now, we have some other people who will be watching this video, and I don't think any of them are starting right away. So I think we'll have the conversation about where everybody starts as we go along. And at some point, we'll all get together and we'll have that conversation about, how to clean up a database prior to jumping in and starting the videos. As far as questions, so let's switch here and let's go back home. All right, so a lot of the initial questions, and like I said, the senior courses are a little better than the junior courses. So so under math courses, WCLN, that's the free to members one. We head down here and we'll head into the Math 11 pre-calc. And okay, so on the left-hand side, so these are all the units, just to kind of give you a quick overview. These are all the units where it's currently in development, not only from a lessons point of view, but also from a database point of view. So Rolly is our keeper of the database, and so he's busy organizing in the background as the lesson developers are finishing their lessons. Rolly's in the back kind of cleaning things up and reorganizing it, and then we're going in and adding videos to that. So as Rolly knows, there's a certain amount of overlap with what we're doing, but with the senior course, there's not as dramatic of changes. In other words, there's a certain amount of, we may be doing it in a slightly different order than the old database was written for, but really the topics are very, very similar. So we can have a bit of overlap and have some video development going on in the database as the lesson stuff is still being evolved. The finance unit is totally done. The exponent unit is about 80% done. The factoring unit, because factoring is so similar to Math 10 for the first 3 quarters of it, you could say that it's about 3/4 done. And the quadratics, that's just getting started. So rational expressions, that's a ways in, that's over half done. Inequalities is over half done, and trig is just barely getting started there. So that kind of gives you a sense for if you're, and I guess that's a good time to point out that what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to consider not only consider, but be very aware of the lessons that are available for you to look at. So in other words, don't just jump in and start making videos and do it the way you think it should be done. What you need to do is we need to provide some consistency for students. And so you need to become aware with what the lesson developers have been doing and the way that they're explaining it. And if they say, I always want you to start with this and this and this, then that's what you do when you're laying out the lessons.
Yeah, right.
Now, and so, for example, in the finance unit, because there's 2 ways that you can do compound interest ones. One is you can, have the R over N and NT, or the more simplified version. Well, I find that students rearranging with the more simplified, they get a lot less confused. So that's the way I've been teaching it in the finance unit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it would be really frustrating to a student to have a bunch of, when they're reviewing their tests, for somebody to be doing it quite differently. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't, explain it and then think, you know what, I have kind of a cool little way that this step would make more sense. And they didn't really point it out in the lessons. Feel free to kind of say, go through it the way the lessons do, and then point out your little thing. Okay, and actually, here's something that some people might do, is that you could just identify it like this, and that will come up with the same result. So it's your choice, but just pointing that out. And feel free to do that kind of stuff. But the main point here is, we don't want to have a situation where someone kind of went off in their own direction, not recognizing what the lesson developer was trying to mold into these minds. And suddenly we have a bunch of students complaining to their teachers, yeah, but what are you doing here? Because that doesn't make sense based on, the lessons. Now I'm trying to review this and I'm confused. So we're trying to avoid that. So anyways, bottom line, before you start any unit, get in there, get comfortable. If there's any questions you have for the developer, send it my way and just say, in the factoring unit, he didn't make it clear what he was doing with this stuff. And I'm not certain which way I should go with this. I will get the developer involved, and they will appreciate your question because they'll totally get where you're going with it, and they'll spell out the way that those last videos were going to go. So anyways, there we are. Once familiar with things and jumping into the database, we head down on the left-hand side. And so all of you who are going to be working on this, it's my job to make you a teacher in the courses that you'll be developing in. If I screwed up and you come along here and you look on the left and you don't see course administration and question bank, then that's my fault. So just email me right away and I will rectify that. And so really all that involves is me making sure that you're a teacher in the course that you're going to be developing in. And so if you don't see the course administration in the question bank, that means you're not a teacher and you need to let me know to fix that for you. So here we are under question bank, questions, and we open it up. Now, this is what the database looks like here. And thanks to Rolly, it's, the database is hundreds of questions, all split up and organized. And the bottom line is a well-organized database makes development now and in the future really quite easy. If you have a database that's kind of a mess, then it becomes really difficult. So for us, if we want to make another little quiz for finances that covers 1.1 to 1.3, as you can see, all we do is we make a quiz and we say randomly yank a question from 1.1 history of finance, randomly select a level 1 from simple interest, maybe 2 level 2s from simple interest level 2, 1 from here, 1 from there, 1 from there, and we have a quiz. And every quiz for each student, Billy and his cousin who are sitting side by side thinking that they got one up on the teacher, and they find out that their quizzes are totally different, but they are representing the course in the same way. That is, they both got a history of finance question, they both got a simple interest level 1 question, even though they're different in both cases. So that's kind of the secret of doing good quizzes and good development, is having a really well-organized database. It's a huge investment in time, but it's worth it for all the people out there across BC and Alberta and everywhere that's using this stuff. It's one of those things that people don't want to think about, is that the quizzes, students go in there, they do a quiz or a test or whatever, it gives them immediately, it gives them the feedback. They're going to go into that feedback, they're going to look at the ones they got wrong and they're going to click on it, and it's going to have your video explaining how they could have done it, so that they can sit there and real good pedagogy for a student to be able to write a test, and 2 minutes after they hit submit and finished, they're sitting there and going over with it with a teacher, yourselves, explaining to them exactly how it could have been done. And so yeah, immediate feedback, and it works really well for them. So that's, and you know, from a teacher point of view, those explanations reduce the amount of you know, chasing around and answering those kind of questions. And from a student point of view, they're not waiting around for their teacher specifically to answer it. So that's why we're doing all this. So yes, as you can see, it's all split up like this, and thanks to Rolly, things are nicely organized. And so for yourself, Kyle, let's head down to factoring. So we just kind of find unit 3. And so what we have is we have 3.1 greatest common factors review. And so if we click on that, and as you can see, there's 10 questions in it currently. And so part of what we want to do is we want to have all these subcategories to have kind of in that 10 or more questions. Some of them are a little bit light right now, but yeah, if you see a category that has less than 10, greatly appreciated if you would add a question or two. And again, we'll have a question or a little session about how to make questions and stuff like that. But I'll give you a quick overview today as well. So here's the questions. If you look up at the top here, I have show the question text. If I don't have that on, then you just see the title. You just see the question titles. Quite often when you're working in a database, having that on is pretty handy, because now you can kind of, you know, if you're trying to remember the question you just worked on, it's pretty easy to recognize in this case. This next button, that's for showing questions in subcategories. Now, for instance, if I'm in just go to factoring and multiplying, then all of these others, the 3. Sorry, I moved down a little bit there. The 3.1 GSF review, those are all subcategories. So if some people get a little confused when they don't notice this button, because they may be working on something, then they go back to that, and then they see all these questions that they've just been working on, and it's kind of like, well, I'm not in that subcategory anymore. But if you don't want to be seeing all those subcategories when you're moving around, just get rid of it. And sure. Now you can see there's nothing in the main category. And if I go into the subcategory, now I only see those. Right. So it depends on what you're doing as to whether you want that on or off. But I think the greatest frustration is people who don't notice that little checkbox, and they're jumping around and everything's not making sense because they just finished working on that now. So anyways, just kind of, it's useful to notice it anyways. Okay, so now if you're going in and you're starting to make videos, good idea, hit the little preview button, the little magnifying glass here. And there you go. And so quite often with your videos, you're going to be copying and pasting some stuff out of here into your video and just put it in as text. So copy, and you can grab it right from there and paste it right into your video background. So you've got your question right there. And some people would do kind of a snippet. In other words, just snip and grab that little
like a screenshot.
Little screenshot, right? And so the advantage of that is sometimes it's a little easier to hold your formatting, which if you grab and paste it, depending on what you're pasting in, quite likely these superscripts are going to disappear, and then you'll have to rebuild the superscripts. But the disadvantage of doing a little snippet is that the resolution can be a little bit gimpy when you move over to the other one and you're resizing it and everything looks a little fuzzy. And if you just grab this and put it in as text and make it yellow with a green background, and suddenly it looks real professional, and no matter how much they resize it, it still looks great. So it is a bit of a compromise. Of course, as you can probably tell from my discussion, I prefer if you grab it and paste it. If you find that you're in a situation where, you know, the fixing all these subscripts, or in some case there might be equation that is really a pain to build in the other one and it's slowing you down dramatically, sure, I get it. Maybe you grab this part and then you screen capture just the equation or something like that. So use your discretion. You know, now you know the pros and cons. Play around with it, do it wrong a few times, figure out what works best. Delete the video because things look fuzzy when you make them bigger, so make another one. I mean, I totally know that I'm paying you for the first, you know, few videos. It's going to take you a few days each to fool around and get used to it and mess it up and delete it and stuff like that. I don't expect you to be efficient coming out of the gate, and certainly charge me for those learning times of getting used to all this stuff. And with the idea that within you know, a couple weeks of you know, getting faster and faster at this, most people are finding that within a couple weeks you're able to knock off, you know, between 5 and 10 an hour, depending on how complicated they are. So that, you kind of think about that as your goal. But again, I totally recognize that this is a learning process. So, so yeah, grab that, paste it in, and then quite often when I'm making a video, I'll write out the solution, just grab a scrap piece of paper and a pencil, and I'll just kind of work it out the way I would work it out. And it just kind of saves a little, you know, these aren't going to be super polished lesson videos. That's not what we're making here. You're allowed to go, yeah, right. Oh, but then I should have remembered to do this. All that stuff is pretty cool. You know, we don't want it to be messy, but it's not quite as polished as those others. And so for me, if I want to avoid a lot of ums and, oh, I forgot to do this and stuff, if I just do it on a quick piece of paper, then it allows me to kind of, you know, shoot my eye over there as I'm working through it every once in a while to make sure I'm not forgetting something. And also if I've, you know, maybe the teacher in their lessons, they kind of pointed something out a lot, or I had something that I thought, oh, I bet you a lot of people got messed up by this. I might make a little note on the side. And then that way, when I'm going through it, I kind of remember to catch those things. So anyway, bottom line, I'll grab this, paste it into the background. I'll do the question real quickly. And then here's how you can just check your question and make sure that, so here's the solution that was sitting in there prior. This is, so we've already gone through the database and put in solutions, and now we're at the next level, and that is making video solutions. So certainly come in here, double check yourself that there's not something that you forgot. You know, we all screw up here and there. So double check that and make sure they're right, make sure you're right, everything's cool. And then run the video, you know, go through your solution, explain things, all that kind of stuff. Once you, and depending on how you're doing, probably in the first bit, you might do 1 or 2 videos at a time and put them in just to see what they look like, kind of thing. So when you're ready to put in your first video, just click on the little gear here. And this is the stuff that I just added in that development area, so you can refer back to it for reference. And again, let me know if my explanation there is missing some details that would make it easier for others. Just let me know and I'll do that. So we're in the question. There's the question title, which you'll use that in your YouTube title as well, as explained in that development area. Here's the question itself, which you've already grabbed perhaps. And then here's the general feedback. Now that's what the student sees when they go and they finish a quiz and they get to review it, that this is what they see. So this is where your video is going to go. So if you decide that, you know, we're kind of in a bit of a question here as to whether we just get rid of all this or whether we kind of save it above your video. I'd say in most cases, your video is going to cover everything they have to say here. Let's just delete it and replace it. Now, how to delete it and replace it? Let's open up here and let's jump into YouTube. YouTube, let's just grab, oh, let's grab this CNN thing here. So we don't care about that right now, but let's, if this is your video on YouTube, you've uploaded it, now you have a chance to look at it, go to share.
Yep.
And wait for it for a second. A lot of people must be hitting this video right now. All kinds of interesting news going on out there. Holy cow. What one was, I picked the wrong one. Okay, let's go. Wow, that is interesting. Never seen it this slow before. I wonder if it's YouTube in general or whether it's. Yeah, I guess so. A lot of people getting their news this morning. My internet connection. Oh, my internet connection. Yeah, perhaps. Well, okay, so I'm going to grab it. It seems as though, like, so I'm just on another screen here, right, and things are going a little faster. So thinking YouTube in general is having a bit of a challenge right now, which is kind of unique. Don't see that very often, but let me just jump over here and I'll grab an embed code from something over here. Okay, so just grab the sample embed code from one of the other ones I have. Okay, so if we were to do this one, and I'll do this, but I won't hit save in the end. So you can see that you can expand your button bar here, and let's go to HTML, and that's where you paste your embed code. Now your embed code from YouTube will typically come as 560 and 315. They used to allow you to set your own parameters and defaults and stuff, but they keep changing that all the time. And so it's, at this point, it seems as though you'll end up getting what they want you to have as a default. And then right here, you're going to add the question mark REL equals 0, as we talked about. And then you're going to update, and there's a video. So I guess the example I used was physics.
Brent, if I can ask, when we put that video in, do you want us to delete the question in that text well?
Right. So
the video in and nothing else?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, unless you look at the question, you say, oh, there's a point there that if somebody wanted to see, we had this discussion about what is it worth holding on to the old text? And it's certainly reasonable to say that, well, some people will want to come in and they understood the concept. They just wanted the quick, where did I screw up? I must have messed up in some little step there along the way. I just want to see where my calculation messed up, which step there. And, but with the YouTube, you can certainly just kind of like jump to the end to wherever you want, right? So is there any value in keeping the old text behind? At this point, we're thinking, unless you look at it, you think, well, it's pretty nice the way they have the 3 steps right there, and it's, doesn't use up much room above the video. Feel free to keep it. But in general, I would say in most cases, you're just going to overwrite the whole thing.
Okay. And
so now you have the question, you have your video in place for them to see. Down below is how they get marked, the right answer and stuff like that. And then you just come down to the bottom and hit save changes, which I won't do just so I won't mess up Kyle's question here. In this case, I'll hit cancel. And yeah, now you've got it in there. And again, you can go back and you can preview it. And again, the question will look the same, but when you submit and finish, what you'll see is you'll see your video down there, and you'll get a feel for what students will be seeing when they go and they do quizzes and tests and all those types of things. So yeah, definitely big value added. It's kind of a background thing, but we did it with a few courses, kind of a proof of concept, and we've gotten really positive feedback from students about, it's kind of like sitting with it beside the teacher and
Yep.
going over your whole test. And some of the ones that they even got right, they admit that they fluked out a little bit because they kind of guessed between the last two that they really weren't sure which one was right. So it is nice to have a teacher explain why this one was right and that one wasn't, even though you fluked out and stuff like that. So yeah, big value added items here. So yeah, basically, as far as there was one other thing I was going to chat about, and that's just like adding a question. So if you go back and you say, you know what, I recognize that, you know, I want to add a question a lot like this greatest common factor question here. It's going to be really similar to that. So what you can do is you can just say, I just have to remind myself, it's the text below it. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So I want it to be like this one, like this number 5, which it has this stuff here. I can just go to duplicate. And if I hit duplicate, then there, I've got a new copy of that same question. And it might make it a little bit faster in some cases to write up a question. So maybe this one, there, I don't know, was there 12 in there? I don't know. So maybe this becomes question 13. And then you go in here and, you know, you can just double click on it and you see that the little editor down comes up. And now you can go down here and you can say, okay, let's make that a 7 this time and all that kind of stuff, and hit okay, and that will update it there. And your solution will change slightly. And now it's a little faster to go down here and make variations on that. You might even keep some of the variations the same. And what you want to do is you just want to make sure that you set the 100% on the one that's correct, and all of the others have to be none. Unless, of course, you want to give partial marks for someone who got most of it right and stuff like that. Now, I'm just going to cancel, and I can't remember whether the duplicates, no, if I hit cancel, then it doesn't finish the duplicate. I just wasn't sure whether it duplicated and then my adjustments were later. Yeah, exactly. So, so in other words, if you're in a subcategory where you recognize that you're a little short on questions, you know, that's definitely something that would be appreciated. And then you can just add that question and add the video and keep on rolling. And so in this one, let's just take a look, you know, for conversation's sake. Multiplying versus factoring, we're a little bit short in that one. So could you add a couple of questions there? Common factoring part 2. So that might be one where we want to add, it almost looks as though Rolly is still working on this one. So I'm probably chatting with Rolly later today. And so, you know, you start off here and
start at the top, hey?
Yeah, start at the top, and he'll know to keep ahead of you. Actually, the common fact, that might be one he had a question for me about, because I had a few questions from him about things. So anyways, there you go. That's, I guess, enough of an overview. As far as dealing with short answer, again, we'll talk about that in a future little meeting, but this is probably enough to get rolling.
Yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense. We had talked about when we met before that I'd be doing videos for questions in the question bank, but also possibly for questions in the actual like lessons, like examples or practice questions. And then you can put
Yeah.
solution. And do you want me to work on just question bank questions at the moment?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So here's the situation: is the same process is being used to make these database questions as the ones that are used for practice in the. So just to kind of clarify, in the course itself. So let's just go back to the front of the course out of the database area. And so let's use a finance as an example. So if we go to 1.4, and this is one that I had worked on. So, so here's a video that came from an outside source, just kind of the miracle of it was something that It's kind of cool. And so this is one where, you know, we're kind of building our own lesson videos. And so the lesson videos, as you can see, they're a little more polished. It's not kind of
Yeah.
writing things out. It's more explaining the concept and working through examples to kind of explain that. So we try and keep those ones a little more polished kind of presentation there. And then if I go up to table of contents, so again, we have kind of people there and stuff like that. Do I have some practice ones? Doesn't look like I have practice ones. Oh, probably in the formula one is where you'd have practice ones. Okay, so again, here's kind of a lesson video. And if we go up there, then yes, here's some practice ones. So the practice
stuff like this.
ones always go into here. And so you have the example, and then these are ones where students, they've just learned a concept and stuff like that. Here's a chance to practice. It gives them the answer if they go to there, and then the solution. And the solution, because, so I'll forgive me for the, you know, conflict of what I'm saying, but for me, I do so much in Captivate that I just found it just as fast to do it this way. But for this is where we typically have, you know, just kind of the same style, same background as you guys are using, but just writing them out. And so this is, so in other words, exactly the same style of videos that you're making will be in the lesson areas, but in their student practice. And it's kind of nice to have kind of a polished explanation and then have them, you know, kind of like a teacher sit beside them, just kind of working through it, you know, gives them a chance to give it a try and then sit down with the teacher and have them work through it. And they can pause it when they kind of confused by things and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a little less official looking, a little, you know, more like a casual discussion kind of idea. Now, with the course being kind of in progress, we're kind of in a situation where, you know, we don't know which practice questions are going to show up in all of these and stuff like that. So kind of the order of things in our mind would be to, let's hit the database, because a lot of the database is ready and we can start hitting that. Like I say, there's, you know, enough structure that we know what's going on. And then as teachers kind of finish up lessons, there may be opportunities to do the same things for some practice areas like that. So I would say, you know, 80 to 95% of your work doing these videos will end up in the database. And as needed, if you guys will be so good at, you know, knocking off these videos, that for us to say, okay, so this teacher has identified for practice, you know, things here. Could you whip up a practice solution video for that, please? And you guys be like, give me an hour, be done, kind of thing. So yeah, it's the same technology, the same process. They're just ending up in two different places. The database is more ready for us at this point. But yes, when I mentioned that, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay, sounds good. I'll work on the database.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, I'm sure I missed things. So so by all means, shoot me any feedback about things that aren't clear, and we will continue the conversation as we go. So anyways, thanks, Kyle. Good questions. And yeah, off you
thanks,
go.
Brent. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, right on.
Excited to do some testing this morning.
Right on. Yeah, that's right. We're kind of stuck inside with all this stuff going on. So yeah, might as well get a little work done, I guess. Yeah. All right. Have a great day.
Great. Thanks. You too. Bye.